Good morning to some, afternoon to some, evening, I think, to some of our attendees. Jan and I are excited for this conversation. We're going to give everyone a minute or two before we get started so folks can join. All right, I think we'll be expecting a couple more people, but it looks like the first set of folks joining the webinar have filtered in. Really appreciate you spending an hour with us. Again, for me, it's the morning. For Jan, I think it's the afternoon. And some of you are all over the world. It means a lot that you'd carve that out. We have a really interesting topic for you to start. So I'm Adam Kaufman with the OSP team. We'd love to welcome you to this webinar around AI-driven healthcare in general, but we're going to put a focus on AI-driven healthcare in 2030 and sort of where are we going and what's next. Very excited and thrilled to have Jan Berger with us. He's been working in AI for longer than I think it's been called that, or at least longer than most of us knew the name, and so has a really nice historical perspective, but I think equally, or maybe more importantly, has a sense of where things are going. So before we get started, I would love to introduce Jan to you, and then we'll ask him to do the same. Jan has 20 plus years of experience in health informatics, including imaging, artificial intelligence. He's been a leader at initiatives like Hello AI and the Edison Accelerator. So driving not only conceptual AI, but real world adoption. And we're lucky to have him here for this conversation. So Jan, thank you for joining us. Just before I ask you to introduce yourself and we get started, as a reminder to everyone, please send in any questions, any comments you had into the chat. We'll try to take them while we're talking, but it's hard sometimes to interrupt a conversation. So there'll certainly be time at the end for comments and questions. So again, thank you all for joining us. Jan, welcome, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Adam, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much as well for making me feel old when you say 20 years in the industry. Actually, that's true. I just thought about this once more. I'm in this kind of traditional machine learning space in healthcare since 2005, so it's quite some time. And sometimes it feels like we made some progress over the years, and there are other days where it feels like, hey, it's just a start. It's just really early days. Look, I'm with GE Healthcare, a big global medtech digital and diagnostics innovator, which operates in 160 countries. We are 53,000 employees, and our fleet of more than 5 million medical devices is used globally to serve more than 1 billion patients annually. Yeah? And my mission at the company is like twofold. First of all, it's really about transforming the story of AI in healthcare from a so far conceptual promise to a practical, high impact reality by equipping healthcare professionals with the knowledge, with the skills, with the mindset to drive this change through the responsible use of AI, which is very important in healthcare.
Appreciate that, and certainly didn't mean to make either of us feel old. I think the first time I felt like a real adult, I was telling a story. I was an adult in the story, and then I was like, "Oh, that was 20 years ago." So something about doing something for 20 plus years. I'm reminded, and I want to attribute it to John Doerr, the famous venture capitalist, but I'm not sure if he was actually the one who said it. But this idea that every so often you see a technology that's indistinguishable from magic. And I think for a lot of us, sort of the chat GPT, generative AI kind of moment felt that way. It felt like there was something materially different. I want to use that as a framing to ask you, where are we actually today in AI? What is quote unquote real? What is hype? And tell us what you think is going to happen in the very near term. We'll get to the history and we'll get to the future, but just let's anchor ourselves in what's real today and what's going on.
Yeah. And maybe, Adam, if I may, maybe we even start this kind of conversation with why AI in healthcare and what are those big problems we have across the globe in this industry, which we try to tackle with a variety of different technologies and changes, and AI being one of those. So maybe I just throw to you a couple
Yeah, no,
of
I think that's great because that'll motivate why we care at all. So yeah, thank you.
sounds great. So look, first of all, and maybe it's similar in other industries, but in healthcare, it's clearly visible. It's the fact that since the last couple of years, we have something what I would call a data explosion. So listen to this. It just takes, for instance, 72 days today to double all medical data globally, compared to it took us 3.5 years, like 15 years ago. 30% of the world's data volume is health or healthcare related. Yeah, so massive amounts of data and information we have to deal with. Actually, every 26 seconds, a new medical article is published, which leads to interesting facts that, for instance, as a dermatologist, right, the doctor who takes care of your skin, would need to read 3,900 scientific publications a year to keep up with literature in that space. And if you think that's a lot, listen to this. As a family doctor or a general practitioner, you would need to read for 21 hours each and every day to keep up with primary care literature. Yeah, I mean, this
Wow.
is the amount of information, scientific research, right, data we produce in this industry. And another interesting fact, in radiology, right, so the medical imaging domain, a so-called mammogram, so an X-ray image of the woman's breast, it contains more information than the telephone book of New York. Even if I don't know if there's still like a physical telephone book. And it goes on, right? Like an X-ray imaging of your lower body with to see your vessels, so-called angiography, could easily go up to 3,000 images. Yeah, and when you think about all this, right, and you think about the strain, the workload we put on healthcare professionals here, this is immense. For instance, right, in my example with radiology imaging, today a radiologist in a 12-hour shift reads about 50,000 images, yeah,
Wow.
compared to just 500 15 years ago. Yeah. And when you think about 12 hours and 50,000 images, you will also realize that they have less than a second for a single image to review. Yeah. So it's massive amounts of data. And I could go on with all this.
And
Um,
if I might add to that, Jan, so not only is the burden much higher, but at least in the US, there's an incredible shortage of all
exactly.
clinicians. So we're
Absolutely.
asking more of fewer people. So I think the problem is pretty acute in terms of keeping up with it and even just doing the regular jobs.
Absolutely. It's pressing, right? When I stick to the US and radiology, 49% of US radiologists report burnout.
Wow.
Yeah, when we move over to Canada, if you are a patient that needs an MRI scan, in Canada, on average, you have to wait for 13 weeks to get your scan. Yeah, and around the globe, the World Health Organization is uh, stating a number of 7 million healthcare professionals missing around the globe,
Wow.
and they expect this number to increase by 2030 up to 11 million. Yeah. And this is just one side of the things, right? This shortage of professionals today, which is increasing. But on the flip side, which adds to the problem, is the fact that, and you know this, especially in the Western world, we have aging population with this, the rise of chronic disease. So what I'm saying is the delta between supply and demand is just increasing. Yeah.
Right.
And um, and this is one of the reasons why I think we need to put in as much as possible useful and validated technologies such as AI into our healthcare systems to somehow start tackling those problems, right? And data and this gap or yeah, this supply and demand issue is just two examples. There are many more, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about quality of healthcare, which could be increased, thinking about cost of healthcare, access to healthcare globally. So there are many things where I believe AI could at least contribute to some extent to tackling some of those problems.
Yeah, I appreciate you walking us back. Just before we continue, Ethel, thank you for writing in. Yes, we are recording this webinar for those of you interested. So hopefully you're following along. But it's hard to take down everything Jan said as a note, and so the material will be available afterwards. Um, Jan, I think you motivated pretty nicely. The challenge that we face. Before we even talk about opportunities to do new things, right? Like, solving basic workflow issues, solving the level of expectation we have on staff to for their throughput, the growth of knowledge, and the challenges we have with just even staffing levels. So I don't know if it's helpful to pick an example and talk about sort of what is actually state of the art, but let's come back to this question of sort of where are we? And maybe to do that, just picking up with your radiology, one of the early use cases for AI has been kind of computer vision,
Yeah.
looking at images in some way. So to talk a little bit about where we are with that, what is working, what's real, what's hype, and that as an example of kind of just today, March 2025, kind of what is the state of AI in healthcare?
Good point. And you just mentioned computer visions, and I talked a little bit about radiology. And look, those two have been a perfect fit the last couple of years. Um, when you, for instance, look into the list of US FDA clearances or authorizations of AI and machine learning-enabled medical devices, you will very quickly realize that rate, I mean, from of more than 1,000 approved or authorized devices out there that are available as products in the US market, more around 75% are radiology related. Yeah. And so radiology by far is leading in terms of AI innovation over the last couple of years. And the reason to this is maybe more complex than I tell you now, but I think it's primarily because it is so-called computer vision, which is relatively simple to do.
Right.
Yeah? Whereas in other clinical domains, healthcare domains, with multimodal data, we have much more complex use cases, much more technical challenges, which we will be able to hopefully resolve the next couple of years due to the latest generation of AI. But yeah, radiology and other imaging domains, pathology, dermatology, ophthalmology, have really been at the forefront at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I mean, I think again, a little more U.S. centric view. The FDA has approved autonomous tools in a number of domains to actually autonomously, meaning without a human in the loop, detect diseases or risk factors straight off imaging. But it does seem to me, even within kind of imaging based AI, but more broadly, that the broad state of the art is to pick the metaphor, co-pilot kind of AI, right? Assistance to someone who's viewing an image, assistance to someone who's doing cleaning up the process. Is that true, or is most of this moving to a point where the AI, whether it's agentic or other things, are doing these things autonomously, or are they sort of feeding workflows back to administrators and clinicians?
So you are talking about what we call decision support tools, right? And those tools today in the US, there is no example of a product out there which is operating autonomously. In comparison to this, in Europe, we have this.
Okay.
We have a very limited number of products, kind of co-pilot decision support tools that claim, right, and have been authorized as autonomous AI for very specific, very narrow use cases. Now, for instance, there is one tool available here which analyzes chest X-rays, right? So X-rays of your lungs. This is something that is happening in each and every radiology department around the world every day. Maybe this is the type of examination, type of scan, uh, which are the most in the radiologist reporting or reading or to-do list, yeah, every day. And what this autonomous technology I just mentioned, what they do is they analyze those cases and basically take out from the radiologist's to-do list those cases which are clearly normal.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's a huge efficiency play. And all those cases where it's clearly like a finding or like edge cases, they stay with a human expert. But all those cases which are clearly normal, they are kind of automated. And I think that's a good use case. We just need to be careful and watch this space because we don't want to do things wrong, of course. But yes, so kind of decision support is one area where a lot of players over the last couple of years have been active, from startups to large scale companies. Things like detecting a brain bleed, detecting lung nodules, and supporting radiologists in I don't know, finding specific conditions in images. But it goes way beyond this, right? So this is just one area. This is one which is very prominent because a lot of is going on. A lot of people are talking about this. There's quite some hype in this decision support area, but there are other spaces as well in healthcare where AI today already makes a massive impact. And I can show you a good
Yeah,
example. So
please.
this is a mobile ultrasound device, yeah, handheld, wireless. You can put it in your pocket. You can take it on your next flight. What I'm saying is you can use this in any kind of healthcare setting. Yeah, extremely versatile, flexible, a fantastic way to scan a patient and see what's going on in the human's body. But we have one limiting factor here, and this is the human being.
Right,
This is the operator of this device because you need to have a certain level of education and experience to get to high quality medical images.
right,
So what we have done a few years back is we have put AI into this device, where, by the way, the smartphone or your tablet is the monitor. Um, and this AI in here tells you during the scan how
yeah,
to move the probe on the patient's body to get to high quality medical image. So what I'm saying is real-time scan guidance. And this is a very powerful example how AI can really be used to even, let's say, enable less experienced clinicians or nurses to, right, to also use ultrasound. And maybe the idea at some point could be, how could we use this kind of technology in the future to really democratize access to ultrasound? That's just one example.
yeah, very compelling. A reminder for the audience: we're gonna take questions at the end, but please start sending them in so we can get them ready for Jan. So Jan, transitioning a little off that topic, I think one of the big concerns, not concerns, but one of the big areas within AI is how to help the clinicians and administrative staff kind of build more AI literacy, for lack of a better word. So I know you've been involved in a number of projects, Hello AI being maybe a good example. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what's being done on the front of not just the machine and the technology, but as you said, the human beings who are using it. Where are we that? Where are we going?
Mm. I mean, look, AI literacy is something I think everybody of us, everybody in this meeting here, every human being needs today. And I think building a certain level of AI literacy is something which we should start very early, right? So, for instance, with one of my projects called Get Ready for AI, we basically go to schools and educate children in a fun way about the responsible use of AI, right? About the societal implications, about the pros and cons of AI. And I think this is something very important that has to start at a very early, right? I mean, age, because every one of us, especially children, are impacted by AI each and every day. It's shaping our lives, right? It's making decisions for us. It's transforming industries and how we, I don't know, communicate with each other. So AI literacy in general is something very important, and it's something very important in particular for healthcare professionals because AI technologies will fundamentally transform healthcare over the next couple of years. Yeah. So this is why I believe it's very important, and this is why a variety of different stakeholders, right, collaborate to drive AI literacy forward. And look, often when we talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence, Gen AI, we talk about the technology, yeah, which is impressive, which is evolving that quickly, but we should also focus on the people, right, who are using and applying those technologies in day-to-day settings. So they need to know how to use them responsibly. And today, very often, when I talk to healthcare professionals, there is still this worry of, will I at some point eventually lose my job to AI, right? Those are the discussions we still have today. And I remember I had this 15 years ago as well. Yeah. So educating them based on kind of tangible use cases, educating them by translating this complex technical terminology we use in machine learning into something they understand is very important.
And I think a piece of that, and we could do a whole webinar or series on some of the
Right.
limitations of AI. So let's not go deep into it. But if we think about educating clinicians and administrative staff, AI doesn't work in all cases. The sort of famous idea or challenge of bias in the sense that it will return what's trained. And so let me link those in the sense of what's the responsibility for us building these tools to train folks and their responsibility to understand the limitations of AI in terms of, here's where it may break down. Here are the edge cases where it hasn't been trained for. How do we think about that part of, AI literacy?
Yeah. So, I mean, from this perspective, Adam, maybe in healthcare we are in a bit of a better situation because it's a highly regulated industry, right? And that's for a reason because right, healthcare is something very personal. It impacts our lives, our families, our loved ones' lives, and all technologies. Any kind of technology we implement into patient care, we as an industry, as an ecosystem, we need to make sure those products, those solutions, those technologies improve healthcare overall and do not, I don't know, harm patients. And therefore, we need to test those technologies and validate them often, right? Like in the case of medical devices, get a regulatory approval to put them into the market. So it's a highly regulated industry for a good reason. On the flip side, it makes innovation rather slow. But again, I think it's for a good reason. And therefore, when I think about, for instance, those cutting edge, off the shelf large language models, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, you name them, right? Amazing tools. Um, I strongly recommend to not use them in patient care settings. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they are not built for healthcare. They are not tested for healthcare use cases. They're not built with the right accuracy criteria in mind. They're not built with the right safety mechanisms, privacy mechanisms. So so we have to rely in patient care on purpose-built AI technologies, right? And here, when it comes to, you mentioned bias, when it comes to inaccuracies, we have a variety of different technologies and concepts how to tackle things like hallucinations, um, uh, and such kind of problems. So there are a variety of different technologies out there which can help us with this and make those models more accurate.
Yeah, I think that's well said. That one, we from a kind of regulatory framework need to work to ensure that we have safe AI, and then from an understanding of the users, understand its limitations, so that we don't apply a model into a setting that it's not applicable.
Yeah, I mean, one issue which is very obvious to appear at some point in the near future is the risk of over-reliance,
Right.
right? So this is something we, I think, as I don't know, as a society, have to figure out how to deal with this overall. It's not just a healthcare specific um, problem, but something we really have to deal with. Even right, children at school, for instance,
Yep.
doing their homework, right? So this risk of over reliance on whatever AI tells me is something serious, and I think we have to find I don't know, answers to this as a whole society, actually.
But when we get to the 2030 question, maybe you'll tell us the positive view of what that looks like. Let's switch gears a little bit. Um, there are some opportunities, I guess, for kind of wholly standalone AI in healthcare, but most of the applications are integrated into some system. So whether it's the ultrasound device itself, or it's the imaging technology, or one that we know is particularly hard because it's sort of the heart of clinician workflow is how to get things into the EMR. So maybe talk to us a little bit about where does AI live inside of a technology ecosystem? What is the stack, and what are some of the opportunities and challenges to try to further integrate it?
I mean, absolutely. So to your first point, what we hear a lot from, for instance, radiologists is, uh, if your AI tool requires me to do just a single click more, I'm not going to use it. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty hard statement, but that's the reality. That's what we hear. And what it means is we as kind of vendors and industry, we need to make sure we build AI in a way that it's seamlessly integrated into existing workflows. That's very important. Yeah, so this is number one. And then I think from our perspective at G Healthcare, for instance, we focus a lot on kind of three areas. One is making our machines smarter, right? Like the ultrasound device I just mentioned. There are many more examples. For instance, to mention one, we use AI as well to shorten scan times of MRI scans, right? And I don't know if you have ever got an MRI yourself, Adam, but it's not a pleasant experience, right? So it's not fun. You
And for
don't want to
some
be,
worse than others, depending on
of
your
course, yeah,
claustrophobia and how long the
but
machine takes. But
exactly. But for instance, imagine you're claustrophobic and you are a cardiac patient, right, where you have maybe challenge to breathe properly and so on. And during a cardiac MRI scan, which takes quite long, you are even asked multiple times throughout the scan to hold your breath. Yeah. So what we have done is we have built deep learning into this MRI kind of scanner that helps us with kind of three things. One is it reduces the scan times. It reduces the need for multiple breath holds. Just one is enough, or even no. Yeah. And last but not least, we even get improved image quality. Yeah. So overall, this is just from a patient experience and patient outcomes perspective, just a win-win situation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
right? So that's what I'm saying. The kind of the first area we are focusing on as one player of many is making our machine smarter. The second area is how can we apply AI in really overall care pathways. So for instance, how can we leverage AI in an entire oncology patient care pathway to improve ultimately patient outcomes. And last but not least, another strong focus is how can we improve hospital operations overall, right? Throughput, length of stay, right? Equipment usage. How can we leverage AI here to improve those efficiencies?
So we have a question from the audience, unfortunately anonymous, but let me frame it before I read it. I think it's been an unfortunate history of a lot of digital tools in healthcare, particularly if we think of the EMR, that have
Mm.
actually added to clinician workflow and created more burden. At least in the U.S., it's not uncommon to hear doctors talk about spending the day seeing patients, logging in at night to do the notes. So the question is how can these innovations and AI powered progress how can it be leveraged? Particularly, this was within EHRs, but you could speak more broadly to support clinicians and reduce that burnout that they're feeling.
Yeah. So look in the just another data point out of the US, 60% of doctors in the US spend more time with the EMR than with patients. Yeah, so basically, what this question also implies is, and it's true, somehow during the or with this digital transformation of healthcare so far, we we have put a wall in between kind of the human relationship between doctor and patient by putting this screen in between them, right, on a doctor's desk, and the keyboard and the mouse. And what we see very often, I'm sure you have experienced this yourself in a doctor's appointment, right? You sit there and in front of you on the doctor's desk, there is this big screen, and right, the doc is
Or
not
even
hiding,
like looking the other
yeah,
way, right? Yeah.
looking into the screen, reading about you from the EMR, typing information about you into the system. But somehow this human interaction between patient and doctor, somehow we destroyed. And I think AI can definitely help here, right? One like hype or prominent term here is AI scribes, right? So kind of imagine you have like an ambient AI listening to a patient-doctor conversation in a very natural way and takes out all the relevant point that have been said and puts it like automatically into the EMR. I think those are very powerful use cases where we see much, much more of going forward. And hopefully those kind of technologies will help us bring back this, yeah, bring back this human touch we have somehow destroyed the last couple of years.
We've talked a lot mostly about clinical applications. I'm interested your opinion on some of the administrative applications, maybe particularly in revenue cycle management. How do you see AI supporting? Is it just going to create a little bit of an arms AI race between the payers and the providers and the systems? And so at the end, we're left the same and they're just adjudicating things with their AI agents. Will we actually make the administrative side, in particular billing, collections, those elements easier?
Oh yeah. I think look, this is a whole lot of an area where we have huge potential for improvement over the next couple of years. Yeah, in all kinds of administrative documentation. I mean, right? Healthcare is so big in documenting things. So that's the billing, right? I mean, there are so many things where AI can really help. Just to mention maybe one example, we have been working on some time ago already with a research partner, was in the field of um, uh, patient appointments, right? So it's like not a more administrative kind of task, but not a clinical really. But imagine, right? And I stick to MRI in this example. Uh, you are a patient, you have an important MRI scan ahead of you, but for some reason you do not show up for this scan. Yeah, which is something bad for you because you don't get your result, right? Maybe this will have an impact to patient outcomes, but it's also quite bad for the healthcare provider, right? Because especially in MRI, they cannot quickly compensate and call the next patient in because the room is specifically prepared with those so-called MRI coils for your specific case,
Right.
right? So and often what happens is this is just a waste of time, waste of money, idle resources, idle right, machines and rooms. And the idea here was, could we eventually find a way to predict
Hmm.
ahead of time, a couple of days before that a specific patient does not show up? And if you can predict it, you can do something about it upfront. You can send a message, a reminder, or give a call, right? And that's what we have done based on, I don't know, like information, historical information about specific patients from the EMR, but also things like weather conditions, traffic conditions. Yeah, when
Okay.
you bring all this together, you can pretty well predict this. And ultimately, in our research project a couple of years back, this led us to the fact that we can save $1 million dollars for like a medium-size level outpatient clinic
Hmm.
using such an algorithm,
Just
right?
by
So
managing appointments and show ups
yes,
better. Very
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
All right, so let's ask the question that's the title. 2030, so 5 years from now, what have we solved that is kind of on the horizon, and what are some of the big things still left to do? Like, what is the state of AI in healthcare in 2030?
So, I mean, I don't know if it's 2030, if it's
Ah,
2035 or whatever, but I tell you what excites me the most, right? And why I believe this is a very exciting industry to be in, healthcare on and the intersection of AI. And actually, Adam, if in our audience today we have people that know data scientists, AI experts that work in boring industries such as gaming or banking, we should tell them the place to be now is
I'm not
healthcare.
sure the gamers would say it's boring, but yeah,
No, look,
certainly we could argue make a bigger impact for humanity, right?
exactly, right? And when you compare healthcare to other industries, we are late in terms of overall digital transformation. Yeah.
Right.
And with digital technologies, with AI, we can we can really make an impact to mankind. And this is what excites me. The technologies are out there. We just need to make it happen. And look, a few examples why I'm so excited. First of all, um, I'm really excited about the fact that now AI in healthcare is shifting from like a one-way tool to an interactive partner. Yeah, so you mentioned Copilot. I mean, for years, AI has simply delivered answers to clinicians, right? Like, or help with scanning images, analyzing data, generating predictions, as I just mentioned. But the future is really about collaboration, where AI adapts, where this technology learns, refines itself through interaction with doctors or patients. And this is a very exciting area today, for instance, right? And I mentioned earlier US FDA authorizations. Um, Even if we use a lot of deep learning in healthcare already today, we are not leveraging the power of deep learning, which is getting better over time.
Right.
Yeah? Today in healthcare, all those technologies, all those AI technologies, all those deep learning products are like frozen in the state of when they have got their regulatory approval,
Yeah.
right? So the so-called continuous learning we are not leveraging in healthcare today. And hopefully in the future, I mean, regulatory bodies such as the FDA are now working on potential pathways, how to deal with like life learning, continuous learning in the future, and this is very exciting. The second thing, what excites me is to some extent related to the ultrasound example I gave you earlier. We see now a shift really, or a potential shift to really level the playing field in healthcare, enabling even less experienced clinicians or a junior doctor, like in a rural clinic, to diagnose with the accuracy of like a top specialist. This is right. I mean, it's all about democratization. It's all about access to healthcare, which is fantastic as well. And another thing which is just possible like a few years now is uh, what I call multimodal AI.
Hmm.
And maybe I need to explain this if I can get a minute on this, Adam.
Of course.
So far, right, all those AI technologies you are aware of in healthcare, I shared as examples the last couple of minutes, are very kind of narrow AI solutions. Yeah, for built for a specific use case, usually built based on a specific type of data, like an X-ray image, right? Like lab results, for instance. But when you think about, Brandon, I stick to radiology, the medical imaging domain, when you think about or experience how a radiologist works, how they read cases, yes, they read your MRI image, but beside this, they also know about your patient history to some extent, at least. They know your latest lab results. So what I'm saying is they know context. They know multimodal context.
Right.
And so far, AI was not able to analyze multimodal data.
Hmm.
But today, right, with the latest generation with so-called foundation models, AI can handle multimodal data, and in the future, in the near future, can act much more than like a expert human clinician, right? Knowing context, dealing with a
Yes.
variety of different types of data. That's super exciting as well. And last but not least, I mentioned this already. What is ultimately right the result of why we do all this is let's bring back this human touch, right? So let's make healthcare human again. And when I talk to healthcare professionals, that uh, a lot of them basically decided to get into that space, to become a nurse, to become a surgeon. The most of them say because I wanted to care for people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And somehow with all this technology we have and all these digital capabilities, like it or not, EMR and so on, we have thrown stuff to them, which makes it incredibly hard to have this kind of human touch. So hopefully we can get this back as well.
That's really nicely said. My father is a physician, no longer practices, but he used to talk about, the curing side of healthcare,
Oh,
which he would describe as the intellectual process of getting to a diagnosis, figuring out a care plan, and the healing process, which was that human interaction. And I think what you said is really insightful, which is unfortunately, a lot of the technology we've thrown at folks to date has helped on the curing side, but has actually made it harder, taken their time, had to do it, and has squeezed out some of that healing. And so if we can use intelligent agents to help with the curing piece, and then also some of this support to make the healing, we can return that balance back to I think a lot of clinicians who are missing.
right. And maybe I can even share a very practical example of some like cutting edge research we are doing right now in the field of, right, another buzzword, agentic AI. So one of I mean, let's talk about oncology, right? So
Yeah,
cancer care. Um, One very important, let's say, process in every hospital around the globe, basically, that deals with cancer patients, are so-called tumor boards, right? So those are meetings, and imagine, right, a meeting room where clinicians from different specialties come together in the morning, um, the surgeon, the radiologist, the oncologist, right? So a variety of different experts. And then they present a patient case
right.
and discuss this patient and decide together as a multidisciplinary care team how to further treat that patient. This is happening everywhere around the world, a very important process. Back to the issue I mentioned at the beginning, we have a shortage of healthcare professionals, especially in specific domains. So very difficult to get those kind of tumor board teams together. Plus, another issue we have in healthcare that we have a variety of different data sources and we store healthcare data in a variety of different systems. So it's also incredibly hard to bring all this data together to enable those experts make informed decisions. So what we have done, and again, it's a research project right now, is we have, and I simplify, we have basically trained AI agents. And let's say we have trained one with the expertise of a radiologist, another one with the expertise of an oncologist, of a surgeon. And then we now can send a multimodal patient case to those agents, and they all analyze the case based on their expertise.
Right.
And they come up with a treatment recommendation based on their right background. And we feed this into a supervisory agent that sits in the middle, who brings it all together and then recommends the human care team what to do with this patient. And this is not, and I want to make this very clear, this is, and all the use cases I talked about, it's not about replacing healthcare professionals, but where we have gaps, where we have, I don't know, a knowledge or skill gap, maybe in the future, a specifically trained AI agent can step in and help here.
Really compelling vision, I think, for hopefully 5 years, but as you said, maybe 10. Last question. So before we go to the audience, let's talk a little bit about what it takes to implement, to build and implement and execute on AI. And in particular, I'm interested in the kind of complexity of the collaborations that are needed. I know that you worked at Edison Accelerator.
Yep.
One of the core goals there was about building collaboration. So maybe talk a little bit about that project, but more broadly, who are the different players that have to come together and what does it take to build that kind of collaboration to successfully develop, implement, and actually, successfully use AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, there are a variety of different areas why the overall adoption of AI in healthcare is rather slow. Um, I mean, one important point which we touched upon already is overall trust and acceptance, right? So here, hopefully, over time, what I mentioned, AI literacy can help. Um, and again, clinicians, healthcare professionals often still fear today that there is a risk that AI could take my job at some point, or compromise care quality. That's another discussion we often have. The second, let's say, issue we very often have is data-related issues in healthcare, right? So what does it mean? For instance, if you, I don't know, train an AI model to for autonomous driving, it is, I would say, relatively simple because everybody with a driver's license can annotate images for that AI, meaning that right can kind of create a ground truth for those because everybody knows like the traffic signs and everything, right? Um, in healthcare, it's incredibly difficult because you always need those experts to create a ground truth for images. At least this has been a problem the last couple of years. Maybe with the latest generation of AI technologies, it's becoming less relevant. Um, but the other data problem we have is that data is really fragmented, inconsistent very often. We still have handwritten doctor's notes, right? Structured, unstructured data, biased data we talked about this is a big problem. Um, and another, maybe two more things. One is across healthcare, we have quite a lot of interoperability issues that make AI work in healthcare incredibly difficult, like legacy systems with a variety of different data standards that really prevent smooth integration into existing workflows. So plenty of different things. And last but not least, in a lot of countries, we still struggle big time with like reimbursement concepts when it comes to AI. Yeah, so for a lot of hospitals, unclear reimbursement models, uncertain economic benefits, really discourage investment in those novel technologies. So maybe I stop here.
Well, so just to follow on that, so how can collaborations, I think I I'm not intimately familiar with what you're doing at GE, but I'm sure it's a collaboration between, a large technology manufacturer, researchers, the actual clinicians themselves. How do we
Yeah.
build those collaborations to move this forward? What are some of the best practices there? What have you done?
Yeah, great question, Adam. So look, I mean, first of all, AI in healthcare is a team sport. So, and what I can really recommend, especially to like early stage startups or people who have a good idea and just want to get started in the healthcare industry, most importantly, start with a real problem. Yeah, we have seen many companies over early stage companies over the years that build a great, I don't know, well working AI algorithm for a use case that doesn't exist. So it is very important. Optimally, on day one, you are already in touch with your potential future end users. Yeah. So what we have done, and you mentioned this program called Edison Accelerator. What we have been doing here so far is we basically met with healthcare providers, large, small, medium, right, private, public, doesn't matter, and basically approached them and said, "Hey, look, do you have what is your most pressing day-to-day problem in healthcare?" And often they couldn't really give us a kind of a crisp problem statement. So we sat down with them usually um, and defined a very specific problem statement. And then we take this problem statement and go out to the startup ecosystem and say, hey, look, guys, is there someone out there who has an idea how to solve this, or even already a prototype or a product? Please reach out. And what we have been doing was we provided like a 6 month long structured program where we bring together the startup, a healthcare provider, with the ultimate objective to basically build this solution. And if we after the 6 months receive positive feedback from the healthcare institution, we then would take over as a big corporate in this space, do a technical integration into our tech stack, and do a commercial integration as well. So this was the way we have done it the last couple of years. This program is on hold right now because we are rethinking the overall concept. But what I'm saying is it's very important to collaborate across the ecosystem. It's very important to get to your end users as quickly as possible and to work on problems that truly exist.
I think well said, because you were commenting you could have a model that isn't really solving a problem. You could have a model that solves a problem, but it creates more friction in how you implement it and use it. So figuring out who are the end users, what are you really solving, and then understanding how they'll access it, whether it's in the imaging technology itself, it's on something that's patient facing, it's in the EMR. So we only have a couple minutes left before we break. Jan and I were joking before we got on with you all that we'll know it's a good webinar if we've left you wanting more. So we apologize in advance that we won't get to every question, but hopefully you found this productive. Please enter any questions. We probably only have time for 2 or 3. So Jan, maybe we do kind of rapid fire. So a couple questions about users. So I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but Savalas wrote in and asked, sort of what do you think about the use of AI for caregivers? I think we can interpret that as family caregivers, as sort of the backbone of engaging with healthcare. What are the applications? What are the opportunities for that population?
So, like for family physicians, I think there is huge potential in leveraging AI in the future, right? Because I mean, just think about the fact with how many different topics they deal with each and every day, right? With each other patient, there's a different problem in a different anatomy, pathology, in a completely different field of healthcare, and they need to be, at least to some extent, experts in all those different fields. And um, one trend we see since a few decades in medicine is that, of course, right, due to research and so on, it becomes more and more, to a point, incredibly complex and diverse, right, medicine, and like super specialized. And therefore, for those kind of general practitioners, family physicians, it's becoming more and more difficult to kind of have at least some fundamental knowledge in all those different areas. And I think this is something where AI as a co-worker, right, as a tech team partner, as a knowledgeable expert, you can consult for a second opinion, for advice, can be very powerful in the future.
Neil writes in, and by the way, Neil, thank you for joining. It's been too long, so I look forward to following up. Reminds us that 50% of costs and outcomes are associated to the individual patient consumer behavior. What are your thoughts on how AI is involved not just in the sort of the diagnosing, but actually in supporting behavior change and helping consumers adopt those behaviors that will keep them healthier?
That's an amazing question. Look, I mean, in general, what we see across the globe are efforts to, right, in healthcare to like shift left. What does it mean? We need to, right, also due to the issues and big problems I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, we need to find ways to move healthcare out of the kind of brick and mortar of a hospital more into the home and more into preventive, right? Rather than kind of fixing the issues and treating a patient, we need to really focus much more in the future on preventive care. And I think lifestyle data, right? Like data acquired on your wrist, for instance, can really help here in the future. Today, when you think about, I mean, today, all this kind of wearables data, right, or all the kind of health and wellness data stored on your smartphone is not used when a doctor makes a decision about you. Yeah? Today, what they do is they do a blood test, they do an MRI scan, which is just a very like a snapshot of your actual health. Yeah. Whereas like lifestyle data, wearables data could provide the diagnostician a much broader view of your health, but we don't use this today because it's just too much data. Yeah, and it's not integrated into the workflows and the processes in a hospital. But if we find ways using AI to bring it together and to show the clinician or diagnostician the data points that are relevant for this specific decision at the right point in time, that can be very powerful. And I think that's the future.
Yeah, just couple maybe shifting to some more technical questions. What do you think can be done to improve data quality? And interestingly, does AI have a role in actually helping us get better data?
That's a good one.
Yeah,
I
thank you,
think so.
Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think so. We see this already. I mean, one problem we have in general in healthcare building AI solutions is that we are always short on data. So this is also what, by the way, a lot of startups, a lot of bright minds coming from other industries into healthcare realize very quickly maybe getting to data to build your models is the hardest part. Yeah? Um, the amount of data and the quality of data. And here I think there are technologies out there to help us with right buzzword or things like synthetic data is really an emerging field of research in healthcare. Another one, which are more focusing on leveraging hospital data, but in a privacy manner, is federated learning. So there are kind of approaches and fields of research out there which will help us with this going forward. And of course, I mean, AI can also help to kind of normalize data, clean your data, and focus also on the quality.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on that, for those not deeply familiar with AI, there is a lot of work to just get to the point where you can actually create the models, right? You have to extract the data, you have to normalize it, you have to redact it, you have to annotate it if it needs to be. So I think using AI tools to facilitate that is a big part of it. Uh, Another really interesting question, and Lisa, hopefully I'm interpreting your question right, but Lisa asks about AI and robotics. So I'm interested, if you have a sense of where robotics are going, whether it's robotic surgery or other things inside of healthcare, and are these just separate things, or is AI part of the core of making those kinds of advances feasible as well?
Oh yeah, it's a huge part. Actually, last week there was NVIDIA's GTC conference, which maybe some of you are aware of, where really the latest things in AI are discussed. And here we at G Healthcare announced a partnership with NVIDIA, so this big chip company, to work collaboratively on like an autonomous X-ray in the sense of you as a patient get your scan done, right, automatically by like a robotic system,
Yeah.
instead of what we discussed earlier, using the term autonomous AI, where you get decision support automized. Here, we are really looking into like robotic technologies, how to eventually handle positioning the patient, the X-ray tube in front of the scanner. The idea is to use like a camera system for this, But this has been actually announced last week and is an example of robotic and AI working hand in hand.
So unfortunately, I think this is probably our last question, but it's a good one to end with. Samuel asks, as we push AI further, what are the opportunities and challenges that might mean for better access and serving to underserved populations, whether that's within developed countries or in developing countries
Yeah.
directly?
Oh, that's a good one. And maybe that's even one where we could spend another full hour talking about this, to
Probably.
be very honest, Adam. Um, there is like good things and bad things here. One is um, what we see a lot is, especially when it comes to like underserved areas around the globe, AI is not often not built for those kind of use cases primarily.
Yeah.
Right, a lot of players in the field, right, from a kind of commercial perspective, you address those use cases where okay, I can make money with, right? And the other aspect more on the data side is that AI often is, right, we come back to this term bias, is often trained with data from specific populations. Yeah, and it's very often also not those underserved geographies. So it's a very tricky problem. But on the flip side, right, thinking more about like preventive care, thinking more about the patient having control of their own health in the future. Maybe we even see underserved regions like leapfrog in certain areas. We have seen this, right, with phone technologies and smartphones and the use of mobile internet in the past already. And maybe something like this could even happen when we provide more technologies towards the patient, more AI-enabled technologies towards the patient. But look, one thing is important here as well. It's access to cloud. And I think in a lot of countries as well, we don't have the right infrastructures today, the right foundations, access to cloud. So a lot of problems to tackle here.
Absolutely, really, really challenging. I think it is a big opportunity. I just point folks interested to two areas. So, most of you who are in AI and healthcare probably are aware of what Mayo Clinic's initiative in the Mayo Clinic platform, making a real effort, Jan, to your point, to gather data from around the world so that we can get to models that address more. And I hope I understood this right. I was on a panel with someone from Samsung the other day, and they said the next generation of phones will actually ship with chips that are able to run AI models locally. So I think hopefully, some of the challenge of getting to the cloud, running the models back and forth, that's hard in rural areas, is just going to be solved by the hardware itself. Many more questions. There's probably many that weren't asked, but we have to stop here. I want to thank all of you for joining us. Jan, thank you. Let me give you the last word. Any comments, anything that you want to leave us with as we think about where AI is today and where it's going to be in the next 5 or 10 years?
And then thank you very much. It was a great conversation in last hour. Really appreciate the good discussion. Look, maybe to close, two things. One is, and I think we have a technical literate audience here, but get your hands on the latest large language models and those tools. Play around with them, right? Experience their power and learn how they could benefit both your private and your professional life, right? So we should practice much more, all of us, right? There are endless opportunities. And sometimes, even if I spend most of my time with this technology, I feel like I just have seen a fraction of it, right? So play around, get yourself familiar. That's one. The second is, I mentioned this already earlier, if you have experts in the field of data science, AI, software development, right, in your family or in your around your friends, empower them to join the healthcare industry. You can really make an impact to humanity here. And maybe with this, I stop.
So again, thank you all for joining. We hope you found it valuable. If you'd like to learn more in general, but also about future webinars and other resources, please take a look at the OSP website. We're excited to continue this conversation and help individuals, healthcare system in general, but organizations in particular adopt this cutting edge technology. So thank you. We'll see you all next time. And Jan, thank you again for spending the hour with us. It was a real
Thank you
pleasure.
very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.